Maryland, Illinois. What's that like? I've never been.
You've never been? Have
no.
you been to DC?
No, I haven't been.
You haven't been? Okay.
I haven't been. No, there's like only like select states that I was able to visit.
Because DC is basically, in the corner of Maryland,
Yeah.
being
DMV.
bordered and then called
Yeah.
District of Columbia, but it's part of Maryland. So Maryland and DC is so inseparable, just like Depok, Jakarta,
Yeah.
or Bekasi, Jakarta. Well, Bekasi still you have this big canal, but Tangerang, Depok, you cannot really distinguish the difference.
Yeah.
So Maryland is just like that.
Okay.
The difference is this: the road in Maryland is better than DC. The plate in Washington DC, it says no representation, no taxation. They didn't have a representative from Washington DC.
Okay.
And the Senate's in the House. That's why their money is very limited.
Oh, okay. I see.
So infrastructures like toll road, highways, and regular roads often come from the federal money.
I see. Okay, good to know. So were you in Maryland, or were you?
I was in Maryland.
Okay.
I was in Maryland, but day-to-day activities is you're part of DC.
What was life like there?
Well, campus, it was college life. So, but it was, I would say, it is much closer to what's called an international communities, and international cities.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, this is capital city of the U.S. On the other hand, this is also capital cities of embassies.
Yeah.
Of international institutions. You name it, every international institutions, they have office there. And so the population is more used to with international flavors in every way. From restaurants, from food to clothing to culture. So, in other area you have international communities, but sometimes dominated by certain groups.
Yeah.
Say you're in the southern side of the U.S.,
Yes.
then Latinos would be the dominant subculture. But in Washington, D.C., there is no such a thing as a dominant subculture.
Isn't there an
Because-
ethnic majority though? I would assume it's
Well,
white.
the African Americans are a large portion
Okay.
of the residents there.
Okay.
However, when we are talking about international flavor, it's just all over.
Are there specific things that you miss from your life in both Maryland and Illinois? Or I guess just like the United States in general.
Well, what do I miss?
What do you miss and what do you not miss?
It's been a while, yeah. It's been a while, so I got adjusted here. But I enjoyed the campus life that is so difficult to replace.
Yeah.
The academic environment, and that is also one thing that even until today, there is no other countries that can yet beat America's number one industry, which is higher education.
Yup.
Higher education until today. You can have first rank university in terms of research, in terms of innovation. In China, in South Korea, even in Singapore. Yeah. However, to create an academic atmosphere as vibrant, as dynamic as most campuses in the U.S., it's still very hard to see. So I think that's, even until today, the only industry that the world has not yet able to bypass is higher education. And I rarely think about what I miss and what I don't miss.
Okay, interesting.
I rarely think about it. I just make things move on. You move from one stage to another stage.
Yeah.
And what I also miss is this, perhaps, when I get involved entirely in the managing our household, managing our family.
Yeah.
That's also something that I miss actually. When I was there, just myself, my wife Ferry, Tia, Mikael. It was just four of us.
Okay.
And I did laundry, I did groceries, I take care of the house, I So I was part of that daily activities.
Yeah, part of doing domestic duties as well.
Including changing diapers. And I can beat fathers here.
Oh, I'm sure.
Even mothers. So in terms of competing, how fast can you change diapers? Because I was very involved in the domestic activities. Once you come back here, then you have all these duties, and then you have the support system that was absent there. Okay, so you have household assistants that help to take care many of these things. Then that's something that perhaps in a way I miss. You can say you missed it, you don't miss it, it depends.
Yeah.
But it's something that I used to do. I used to do groceries at around 11 p.m. That's my time to do groceries.
That's late at night.
After I'm done with all my work on campus, I went home, I pick up the list. My wife would prepare the list. And then I was the one that went to the groceries and do all the groceries done around midnight and come back. And I do that like twice a week on regular basis. And even the list of items, I created the list based on the structure of the aisle in the groceries.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go through back and forth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was something that I miss. And once you're back here, you have all this support system which we are blessed. But on the other hand, you miss that sense of being
involved,
being doing errands, something that rarely done here.
Whenever you miss parts of your past lives, it's usually like it boils down to the little things. Like with me, it's as simple as like walking down the street and like taking the school bus like from my apartment.
That's true. And also this, taking the kids to schools in the morning, which is I used to do that every morning. And that, when I lived in Illinois, Illinois is just such a flat and plain area. So when you are standing in the middle of cornfield, you feel like you are in the middle of planetarium. Okay, because you can see the sky from its foot all the way. It's just like it's truly like a planetarium.
Yeah.
So this is what I often do with Tia. She was still about 2 years old, 3 years old. We are seeing sunset. We're going to a large cornfield. We're trying to find sort of the top of a small hill. We stopped there, and then see sunset. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Sometimes you see sunset on the beach, right? Imagine seeing a sunset in a huge cornfield. It's an experience that we rarely find here.
Yeah.
Because you cannot find an area that is so flat with nothing but cornfield. Here, you always find trees.
Yeah.
I think when you're in LA or you're in the East Coast, you don't find this.
No,
it's only in the Midwest.
Cities.
Well, in Midwest.
Okay, but were you in Chicago?
I was in west of Chicago, DeKalb.
Okay.
But in Midwest, especially Illinois, Iowa, there is no hills, there is no valleys. It's just completely plain and flat.
Okay.
And that is a unique experience. Some people would say, it's so boring. Yeah, it's true in a way.
Yeah.
It's so boring. There's nothing there. But on the other hand, if you do look at it from a different perspective, you can enjoy things that you could never find in big cities.
True. No, I wasn't gonna say it's boring. I was gonna say it's simple, and if anything, people with like us, like we live in the big city now. We live in Jakarta, and some people like me. I've only ever lived in big cities. I tend to exoticize. Like, what would it be like if I just moved out into the cornfields? If I become a farmer?
Well, if you do it for a short period of time, I think it would be a great experience.
You do it forever?
If you do it for a long time, that's a completely different story.
Yeah, but it's also, like the grass is always greener on the other side, right? I think as humans, we're always looking for the things that we don't have and exoticizing the other. That's also kind of like, when I say the grass is greener on the other side, that was also my experience. Like when I moved back here, I wanted to ask you if when you studied abroad, did you know that you were going to come back here, or did you wanted to live in the States? And
no, I know I'm going to come back. Well, part of the requirement was also to come back.
What requirement? Sorry. Like from parents?
No. My funding was coming from the Fulbright program.
I see. Okay, national scholarship.
It's a scholarship from the U.S.
Okay.
So all my scholarships for my master's and my PhD all are coming from the U.S. I didn't get any scholarship from domestic institutions.
That's interesting.
All international. So I applied for Fulbright. I got Fulbright and then went there. And there is this 2 years home residency requirement.
Home residency.
2 years
there.
home. No, here.
Oh, here.
2 years home residency requirement.
Okay.
So I have to come back and serve in my home country for 2 years.
Got it.
That's what I mean by 2 years home residency requirement.
I see. Okay.
And you can do it anytime, but you just have to come back. But what I had in mind was also this. I plan to come back. I plan to come back to campuses actually, and to teach and to do research, and to be part of our society. And that's also the idea. So I went to school in Jogja, my primary education, secondary education.
Were you public school?
Yes.
Entire life?
Entire life.
Okay.
So I am a product of Indonesian curriculum.
Damn
I
straight.
went through sekolah negeri.
Damn straight.
SD negeri, SMP negeri, SMA negeri, Universitas negeri. UGM.
Yep.
So I always said I am product of domestic curriculum. And then I went to US for my master's and for my PhD. And over there, when I said I plan to return, and then I remember what I had in mind when I was still a university student in Jogja. At that time, I sort of trying to define what kind of job that I will be doing in the future. So I sort of writing some criteria, what kind of job.
Yeah.
So I decided to have 3 criteria for future jobs, which I don't know what yet, okay? But 1, it has to allow me to be intellectually growing.
Yes.
Okay. Number 2, it has to be financially good.
Of course.
Okay, I don't plan to be a conglomerate or anything, but I want to be independent.
Yeah, financially sustainable.
Financially sustainable.
Yeah.
Number 3, I want a job that create socially impactful.
Contribute.
So these 3 things.
Yeah.
Intellectually growing, financially good, socially impactful. So I thought going to be a university lecturer can meet that 3 criteria.
Yeah.
Or working for development agencies.
Okay.
That can also do that.
Development agencies, so like private sector.
In private sectors, but also international aid, international development programs, things like that.
Okay.
UN agencies, so those kind of institutions. So I went to the US, I studied, and then after I finished my graduate programs, I work in Chicago. So I work in Chicago as a research manager for an association of electronic manufacturers across the globe. So it's a global electronic manufacturer, and I was the research manager. Okay. It's called IPC.
Okay, flex.
Now, what's interesting is this. When I worked there, I didn't plan to work as an entry strategy to get green cards or to get permanent residency status.
You wouldn't even have been allowed, right? Because of your scholarship?
No. However, they can sponsor.
Oh, I see.
And there's always ways.
Okay.
If there is a domestic sponsor that is willing. Because I did, the Fulbright program was for my master's.
Yeah.
For my PhDs, all funding coming from the universities and other institutions in the US that doesn't require residency requirement. Anyway. So I remember meeting my superior when I decided to go back home. I'm planning to go back to Indonesia. And I remember what he said, Anis, be responsible, come on. And he was very blunt, be responsible. It was 2005 and there's a flu break, an outbreak here, just like pandemic at that time.
Yep.
Remember the flu? In 2005,
I'm born 97.
97, okay, you were 7 or 8.
Yeah.
It was flu burung.
Okay.
Avian flu. All over Asia, including Indonesia.
That's nasty. Okay.
So for someone lives in Chicago, you talk to your superior and said, I plan to go back to Indonesia.
Yeah.
And it's be responsible. There is a flu outbreak in your country.
Yeah.
And you're returning. And we had discussions, and then I told them about these three things. If I stayed here, I get the first two, but not the last one.
Not the last one, right?
There's minimum rooms for first generation immigrants to play anything impactful in the society.
Yeah.
It's always second and third generations.
And moreover, you and I actually, now knowing this, we share very similar values in terms of that as well. One of my values was always, I want to contribute to society, but my society in the communities, in the country that raised me. And so it would have been different if we were doing it in the United States.
Exactly. And the rooms is very minimum.
Yeah,
and I said, if I come back, my impact would have been much wider. And I remember what his response was. He said, wow, on that, I give up.
Okay, yeah.
Immediately. On that, I give up. Yes.
Can't top that.
I cannot really argue. And he actually threw a big party for a farewell party for me.
Oh, that's sweet.
When I left. So anyway, and then I returned. And of course, as many Indonesians who studied abroad, when it comes to returning to Indonesia, there's always a worry.
Yeah.
Will I be experiencing hard landing? Will I crash? Will it be smooth landing? Those kind of questions is always there.
Can I get a job?
Can I get a job?
Yeah.
And especially for me, I was raised in Jogja. I grew up in Jogja. And then I decided to return to Jakarta, which is a new place for me.
Okay, so it was like your first time coming to Jakarta.
No, I've been to Jakarta many times, but not live in Jakarta.
Okay, yeah, that's what I meant.
So I lived in Jakarta only after I returned from the US. It was 2005. So I returned 2005, and then I started working here.
I know that transition must have been so rough.
It was challenging.
Yeah, I know it.
However, brace for impact, and then you went through it.
Yep.
But I was blessed.
Yeah.
Of so many friends, networks who help in the transition, and family support. Definitely
major.
Without that family support, it'll be tough.
I know it. Yeah.
So, for those who are studying abroad, I often said, we all experience, you are so far away from your homeland. And that doesn't mean you are losing your nationalism. No, what I experienced is the other way around. When I was there, I felt much closer to Indonesia. I felt that the love to the country, love to the nation is so real.
Yeah.
When you are so far away. And listening to Indonesia Raya is never touching when you're listening it here, down here. When you were here, it was just like another, routine that you were doing it.
It's another Monday, yeah.
Yeah, but when you are in a faraway place, especially when you are alone, Indah, let me share my experience. I went to the U.S. first time as a high school student. It was an exchange student. So no one else but me in that city who is Indonesian.
Which city were you in?
Milwaukee.
Wow. Yeah, that's very... Milwaukee, for those of you that don't know, very white.
Oh, yes, completely.
Not international at all.
Not international at all. Very white.
Why
very
Milwaukee?
German. Well, it was, basically the AFS decide.
Oh, okay. You didn't choose.
I didn't choose.
Okay.
So I lived with an American family, German descendants, and then you know what? But I lived in a street called Hawthorne Avenue, right next to Grand Park, and there's a Lake Michigan next to it. So the neighborhood is very nice.
Okay.
It was one of the earliest neighborhood. But what I experienced was, I was there alone. And rarely anyone know about Indonesia.
Yep.
It was in 1987, 88. And minimum information about Indonesia, about Islam at that time. And there you go. There is someone from Indonesia coming in.
Who's a Muslim.
And my mother, my host mother, she is an education coordinator in the church. So what happened was, this is very interesting. She told me, Anis, there's so many people that wanted to know, how do you pray? How do you pray?
Like how? Like literally
how?
The
Literally.
Wow. Okay.
And wanted to know, what is Islam? And they wanted to see a Muslim. This is before internet, before all of that, instant information available.
People were looking at you like, look at this brown Muslim kid. Everybody's just staring at you like you're a zoo animal.
I know.
Was that kind of what it was like? Kind of?
Almost. Although they were more respectful in a way, right?
Yeah.
But they were curious. They wanted to know.
But they were definitely staring at you.
Oh, yeah, of course. And then, but fortunately, I was an exchange student. In a way, as soon as you said I'm an IFS student, then it put you in a different category, right? So what happened was my host mother asked me, Anis, whether you agree to give sort of a talk in the church. Okay, sure, I'll do it. So it's not in the altar or anything. The church in Milwaukee area, and I believe across the U.S. is the same. There is this ground level, which is for religious activities, and then they have a basement.
Yeah.
And the basement is for social activities.
Yep.
So social activity in the basement.
Okay.
And here is mosque is I think the same thing, but usually here in the mosque we don't have basement here. What happened is the second floor is for mosque, the first floor is for social function.
Yep.
So receptions and everything, it's the same thing. So I came for the first remarks. It was called St. John's Church in Milwaukee. It was the first talk I had given. I was second year. I was a senior student. And after that first talk, I got invitations to talk to so many churches.
What was the talk about? What was your first talk about?
It was basically basic. People ask simple questions. Indonesia, tell me about it.
Yep. Yeah.
And we have no idea. But you know what? They know Sukarno. They hear the name of Sukarno.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I remember that. They were saying, Anis, I heard about Sukarno. I know about Sukarno, but tell me about Indonesia. And when I told them this is, how many islands, how many people, the language we speak, they dropped their jaw. Wow. And then, I remember one of my teacher was there. He asked me, how many hours of flying from your home to Milwaukee? And when I told them it's like 23 hours, we're like, wow. And majority of the people in that room had never
gone out of the United States.
Out of the United States or even fly.
Yeah.
Okay? So it was like, so number one is questions about Indonesia. So many questions. And two is about Islam.
What is Islam?
What is Islam? How do you practice Islam? And all of that. And remember, that was less than a decade after the first encounter of Americans with Islam, which is the Iran hostage, the U.S. embassy and Iranian conflicts at that time. After the coup.
This was before 9/11?
Oh, no. It was 1978.
Okay. Oh,
this was 1978.
Okay.
That was the first encounter collectively between Americans, and there's an incident. There's a hostage taken. American embassy staffs were being taken hostage, and then there is I think it was 1978 after the revolution. It ended around 1980 with Reagan coming to power, and then the hostages were released. But anyway, there is this gap between their understanding and the reality.
Yeah.
So I came there, it was 1987, and I think I given more than 20 more than 20, more than 30 perhaps, remarks across different churches. And my mother, my host mother, was sort of the promoter. she keep promoting myself. Yeah. So Anis is able to speak this and that. So she keep taking me to various different meetings, and including clubs like Kiwanis, Rotary, Lions Club, and all of that. So that was my experience being an Indonesian alone, with no other Indonesians.
In rural white America.
Yeah, well, in Milwaukee, there are quite a few Indonesian students. A few, not many. At UWN, University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. And I came to visit, make a visit to them. However, there is no Indonesian community whatsoever. My second visit was, well, not visit, but my second time being in the US was as a graduate student. But at that time, it was in Washington. I went to school at University of Maryland College Park, just suburb of DC. Yet again,
no community.
At UMCP, there's only less than 40 Indonesian students.
Yeah, that tracks.
Very small number compared to the size of our campus.
But did you guys hang out together? Like, did you host community events together?
Yeah, this is also one thing that I'm glad I did it. Initially, I interact more with international students. So after I came to Maryland, I met quite a few undergrad. Donnie, who just passed away because of COVID 3 years ago. And then there's a name Jansen, who helped me to get a driver license. Those are Indonesians. But I spend most of my time with my classmates. And I was the only Indonesian as well in the programs. In the school public policy, there is no other Indonesians. I'm the only Indonesian. So I made friends with Brazilian, Portuguese, Indians, so many Indian students.
Always.
So actually, I spend much of my time interacting with Indian students at that time. Yeah. And one of my good friends is G.V. Rao, Gudivada Venkastevara Rao. That's his name. And
that's a long name.
I think he works for the World Bank right now. And I get used to interacting with different culture and experiencing new things. I'll give you one example. Eating rice.
Yeah.
We all eat rice.
Yeah.
Right? But when you eat with your friends from India, you eat rice with
Tiffin.
No. Susu itu apa namanya? Yogurt.
Yogurt, yeah. Okay.
So you mix your yogurt with rice, with curry, and for most of us, mixing the two is rather unique. Okay. And so I get used to various different cultures when I was there. So I spend most of my time with international students, and this is also something that I learned. We can easily meet other Indonesians when you're back in Indonesia.
Yeah.
When you're out there, use your time to network with international community and with domestic students.
Right.
So one of my good friends, his name is Dan Gilligan, he's American. He is from Cape Cod, which is an old area outside Boston. So during vacations, I would come with him to visit his family in Cape Cod.
Okay.
So I'm interacting more with international students and domestic Americans than with other Indonesians. And that was done especially during my master's. After when I did my PhD, there's quite a few Indonesians. However, we balance our time from interacting with other Indonesians and also with the international students. Because I would encourage anyone who's listening to this talk and you're being abroad, do not create 5 by 6 meter square Indonesians in your room when you are so far away.
Yeah.
Take advantage of being so far from Indonesia to learn different culture, to interact with individuals from different nations, and develop your language proficiency.
Yep, big one.
This is very important wherever you are, if you are being internationals. However, don't forget your roots. And my advice to international students who are away, put a map of Indonesia in your apartment.
Okay.
Just that one map. And that's what I did too. I put one map of Indonesia. It was a batik map. I put it there.
Just so you remember?
Just to remind me every day. Every day. Before I go to bed, I look at that map. And this is the place where I came from. And this is the place that I will return. And this is a place that I will then steward myself for the country. My stewardship is for this nation. And put it there. On the other hand, I told our students here in Indonesia, in every classroom, put a global map. Okay? To give you an idea that Indonesia is just one of many countries.
Yep.
We're just part of the global society. I told, this is my experience too when I came back from my FS program. What I didn't realize before is this. I was a high school student at the time.
Yeah.
I was a citizen of Jogja. I was a citizen of Indonesia. And I realized that long ago. But I realized I was a citizen of the global world. And I realized that after I returned from an exchange program. That I'm not only member of Jogja, I'm not only member of Indonesia, but I'm also a member of a global community.
Yep.
So that exposure shifted my view whenever we're talking about issues, talking about, plans, put that international perspective into account. So going back to my time as a student, and my advice to friends who are now studying abroad, do extend your networks.
Yep.
Not only with fellow Indonesians, but I would encourage you to have more non-Indonesian students. And if it need be, do a statistic today, right after you listen to this talk. Make it 2 columns. One column is Indonesian friends, friends of non-Indonesians. Look how many you have.
Yeah.
If you have more Indonesian friends, then you really need to have more.
You're doing something wrong.
You're doing something wrong. Right?
If you're spending all this time, all this money, especially because it ain't cheap living in America. You spend all these resources to live in the United States just for you to create a miniature, like little Indonesia within the city that you're in. That's definitely a waste. And I find it very interesting. I want to ask, so during your time as an Indonesian international student, would you say that the social culture amongst Indonesian international students like you at that time was of the same mentality of like, yeah, of course, don't forget our roots, but let's make friends with other people while we're here? Would you say like that was more of the norm, or was it the complete opposite where they're like, no, we're Indonesian, like kita mah orang Indo aja lah kayak gitu, and like they make their own little like Indonesian gang?
At that time, there is two different setting, I would say.
Okay.
Those who are in the graduate programs.
Oh, versus the undergrad. Okay. So
that's rather different in a way. Most of the graduate programs at that time were under scholarships.
Yeah.
And they were actively involved in non-Indonesian activities too.
Yeah.
The undergrad at that time, at least the way I look at it is in Maryland, they are also very active outside the community.
Okay, that's so interesting.
Very active outside community because number one, we are so small.
Yeah, that too. Less of you guys back then compared to now. Yeah.
So, the name I mentioned is about Doni Prasetya, for example. I think he was one of 2 or 3 Indonesians in the...
You still keep in touch with Doni Prasetya?
Well, he passed away 2 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But most of all, feeling a bit like a dipshit.
But this is one example. And then Jensen, he's also active with the international community. So I would say it was more like the first. In which, yes, I'm Indonesian, but I'm here and I'm engaging with other activities.
That's so interesting. That I have so many questions. Like I wonder if this is contingent upon cities, because Maryland is not one of those like states. It's not like California or New York or Boston where it's like it kind of has this reputation of like, you know, like you're in the city and there's like people study hard, but they also party harder. So I don't know if it's location. I don't know if it's generation.
Well, in this area, there's a large Indonesian community in DC, and whenever they have event, I came, I attended, and I was part of the community too. So you don't detach. I didn't detach.
Okay.
I was still part of the community.
Don't do what I did and detach.
I didn't detach. I'm part of the community. And even now, when I return to Washington, D.C., then, you know, many of old friends were still there. And we would have gathering.
Nice.
In which, you know, we met with so many of my good friends in Washington. So that's why I said, you know, write that 2 columns.
Yeah.
List it. How many friends you have, international friends, and how many are domestic. And then you have to balance that. And I think I didn't intentionally create that balance. But for some reason, it was balanced in a way.
It worked out for you.
It worked out well. So I'm part of the community. I was active in the community and in the Indonesian community. But on the other hand, at schools, most of my friends were international communities. So that balance, I think, it's in a way needed. But the important lesson is this: when you are part of an Indonesian community, it strengthens the feeling of brotherhood, of sisterhood, of, you know, bonding with fellow Indonesians. But let's not forget, you're not in Indonesia. Take advantage of being away to expand that networks. And I think the comfort you get being an Indonesian community often make you unwilling to take an extra steps to actually do an extra miles in extending your networks.
One of the things that I wanted to touch upon, but I think we're talking a lot about like, you know, Indonesia's global presence on the international stage, like as an extension of our discussion about being Indonesian international students abroad. And I think one of the key things I've realized, something about Indonesians and Indonesian culture that typically inhibits us from progressing, whether it be on the international stage or even just domestically, we're so used to just, kita di sini-sini aja deh. Like we stay in our comfort zone. I noticed that a lot with Indonesian international students during my time, which was not that long ago. I came in 2016. I left 2021. So it's not that long ago. And why I'm very surprised you're telling me all of this is because during my time, Indonesians were the complete opposite, to the extent where we even had a reputation with international students from other countries, and especially the American domestic students, where it's like, why are all of these Indonesian kids, like they're just like in their own little gang, like they don't want to talk to anybody, they don't want to speak in English. Like we had that sort of like reputation, and that was actually part of the reason why I detached. Like in my experience, something that I kind of wanted to like open up today about too was that during my time in college, I really regretted that I felt ashamed to be Indonesian within my circle. My environment at that time, because we had a bad reputation. Because one time I was taking a test at school, and this was a class. This was one of my business classes where there just happened to be a lot of other Indonesian kids, Indonesian students in that class as well. And I just so happened to arrive late. And I usually sit in the front of the class. I was one of those. But I arrived late, so I sat at the back where usually the Indonesian students were. And the teacher was definitely like, he was kind of looking at us a certain way, like just the Indonesian students. And then I realized what he was doing is because, oh, he thinks we're cheating. Because, and then I found out like, oh, Indonesian students at my school. I went to LMU in Los Angeles, California. Wonderful school. Unfortunately, we had a bad rep of like, oh yeah, like these students like to cheat and like use Pepe. Do you know Pepe? What that stands for? Past papers. So during my time, it was like this whole thing where like the students, especially the Indonesian students, like they would use past papers to learn so that they could guess what questions that would be on the test from like Indonesian students that took it before. So that was like a whole thing. And part of the issue was also, I thought a lot about the greater political implications of me being in the United States as an Indonesian international student, we're kind of informal cultural ambassadors here,
yes,
right?
Of course.
And so I found it very sayang aja that in my environment, there was a part of me that also wanted to be close with the Indonesian international students. And in my experience, I felt that they saw it, like they saw me as like, oh, she prefers to hang out with the white kids or the black kids or like, the other Asian kids. And that sort of like alienated me from them.
I see.
I'm just surprised because how did it go from what you were describing to what I'm describing now? Like, I don't get it.
The role that we can play at the global stage as an Indonesians. Two things here. At the international stage level, in the public level, and also at private levels. In the public levels, if Indonesia want to be heard and want to be meaningful, then we have to promote, bring ideas that benefit the international communities. So we cannot expect the world to respect us if we are not offering ideas or solutions to the global challenge, to the challenge of humanities. So just being here doesn't mean you will be heard. Yes, for give you one example. We are the fourth largest nation.
Yep.
We are the third largest democracy. And then economic-wise, we're the number 16 now out of top 20 economies. Now, that doesn't translate automatically into global players.
Yep.
You have to get out there, bring your agenda. This, I'll give you an example. What kind of agenda that Indonesia can bring? We can articulate agenda that matters to the Southern Hemisphere country, representing Southern Hemisphere. We can go out there and say, we have this agenda for environment.
Yeah.
This is a challenge to humanities. And then we can have agenda for talking about refugees who are everywhere now.
Yeah.
We're talking about peace. So there are global issues that Indonesia can step up and offer solutions. We talked earlier about Sukarno. Okay, why the name of Sukarno echoed in so many countries? Because at that time, Indonesia go outside the country, bringing ideas about what? About independence, about equality, about eradications of colonialism.
Right.
And Indonesia was speaking out loudly on this issue.
We were assertive back then.
Very assertive. And it was only 10 years after independence. We hosted one of the most influential conference. It's called the Asia Africa Conference in Bandung, 1955. And it's called Pesan Bandung, the Declaration of Bandung, the Bandung Resolutions. That was only 10 years after our independence. And leaders from all over Asia and Africa came to Bandung. And Sukarno was at that time, Sukarno and Ali Sastroamidjojo at that time was sort of the prime mover of that. The other international leaders at that time was Jamal Abdel Nasser from Egypt, Nehru from India, and Tito. Well, Tito is the non-aligned movement. But these three, the top three leaders of the New World, newly independent nations. So what happened is they're talking about global agenda, eradications of colonialism, end of colonialism, equality of all. So we are being heard, not because we're big, not because of that, but because we are offering agenda that will help billions of people across the globe. So today, if Indonesia want to be heard, we cannot just say our economy is this big. Okay, our people is this size. But you need to go out there and talk about international challenges. The simple question is this: what does Indonesia offer to the global community? What does Indonesia offer to humanities? What are the challenges that Indonesia is going to tackle? And we have plenty of ideas, of solutions, and experience that we can offer to the world. I live in Jakarta. I work as a governor of Jakarta, and I offered our experience to city across the globe. And when we offer our solutions, they're actually buying it. And sometimes we thought we have so many problems in our city. Well, look at other cities; they have many problems too. And if we are doing breakthrough here. We should share our breakthroughs to other countries, to other cities, and they will be seeing us and learning from us. So, Indonesia and the world, we need to see it as an arena that we share to the world. Not only we're learning from the world, but the world need to learn from us. So that's at the public level. Now, at the personal level. My suggestion is to any young Indonesians, get a passport. Okay?
Yep.
And just by having a passport will sort of remind you that you're part of a global community.
Sorry, quick question. Why? I'm aware that there are a lot of Indonesians that don't have passports. What is the reason? Is it because it's expensive, or is it just because they don't feel like I don't even want to travel?
Need. Well, no, there's no need. Sometimes people don't feel the need. Well, even if you come across people here in Jakarta, ask how many people have been to Cengkareng Airport. Well, only those who travel and fly. But most never fly.
Okay, I see.
So it's a simple question. But have you been to Cengkareng Airport? Have you been flying? We just assume we all have experience of flying. It's not yet there. That's why I said, just get a passport. You don't know when you had the opportunity. So one, and then two, pay attention to international issues. Because it matters a lot. And it number one, it makes you feel that you're part of that global community. Number two is you are following international issues that we are part of. And Indah, I remember these things when the pandemic started. It was early 2020. Okay.
Dark days, yes.
Dark days, yes. It was. I think it was in January. In January 2020. I was gathering leaders of all departments in the city of Jakarta. The head of the departments, head of hospitals. There were around 150 people in the room. So I asked simple question, 3 questions, and please raise your hand if the answer is yes. Question number 1: how many of you read news about Indonesia, about Jakarta every day? All were raising the hand. News about Indonesia, about Jakarta every day. Number 2, how many of you, please raise your hand if you follow Indonesian news every day? Almost all.
Almost all, yeah.
Okay.
Good start.
Third questions. How many of you follow international news every day? And then only like 5 to 7.
Yeah, as expected.
Okay. Out of 150. So I told them, since only a few is following international news, listen to what I said and just do it. Because you are not following international news. Out there, there is an outbreak.
Yeah.
Called Wuhan pneumonia.
Yup.
At that time, it wasn't called COVID yet. Pneumonia Wuhan. It was a pneumonia Wuhan. Do pay attention. And I remember at that time I said, from now on, do not shake hand. Okay?
Yep. Limit physical contact.
Limit. And they were like, gak boleh salaman. No cipika-cipiki. No cipika-cipiki. Oh my God.
Okay. You crossed the line when you start saying no cipika-cipiki.
No cipika. They were like, huh? And it was like early February or late January. But do listen because, all of you are not following international news. Just listen.
Yeah.
But again, if you follow international news, you realize that something is going on out there. And at that time, I remember, if you don't read materials in foreign language, there is no way you can grasp the magnitude of the tsunami that is coming. Okay.
Yeah.
Because most of the news that we see here were anecdotal about COVID, but not policy, not substance. Almost all substantive materials on handling COVID is all in international languages. If you don't master the language, then if you don't master, you find someone else to read it for you. Yeah. But the idea is read and expose. That's why number 2 is read. Number 3, when you are abroad, well, take advantage for an opportunity to be abroad. My suggestion is just fly to Singapore. If you're in Jakarta, fly to Singapore. Why Singapore? Well, other countries far further than Singapore. Singapore is closer.
Yeah.
And it's actually closer flying to Singapore than to Medan.
It's closer flying to Singapore than to Papua.
Of course.
Yeah.
But spend a day or two just to have an experience being in a different country.
Yep.
Okay? You don't have, I'm not suggesting you to move to Singapore. No, I'm just suggesting to expose yourself to the international ambience that have different culture, that have different way of operating compared to your country. So if you are already abroad, then take advantage to experience being ambassador of Indonesia. Be a responsible citizen.
Right.
Forever I am an Indonesian.
Yep.
Whatever I say, whatever I do, I represent Indonesia.
Yep.
If you do good thing, you will be remembered as Indonesian doing a good things. When you're doing a bad thing, you will be remembered as Indonesian doing a bad thing.
Yeah.
So don't ever think like you're only representing yourself. No, you're representing a country.
Yeah.
And you know what? That passport had the logo of Garuda on your name. But be a responsible citizen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I said if you're abroad, take advantage to talk about, share about Indonesia. The way you share about Indonesia is by asking other nations, other culture questions, and then you reply by saying this is the way we do it in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So asking questions, engaging in conversation is key. So when you're abroad, do that.
I would also add, like, when you're abroad, let's say, let's take what you just said just now, going to Singapore. Maybe you're in Singapore for 3 days, 4 days. That's not a long time. You're probably not planning to make friends unless you're the type of person to be sparking up conversation with a random stranger in a coffee shop, which you could also do. But if it's not an option for you to well, not like it's an option, but if you don't want to, sharing with people about Indonesia because there's kind of nobody to share to, you don't have a community in Singapore. At the very least, another thing too I've noticed is that when you go abroad, actually engage with the local culture of where you are going, right? Because I see this in my circle. Keep in mind, I come from a very state the obvious socioeconomically privileged circle, so it might also just be like a middle and upper class thing, but they'll go to France and all they do is just shop. You know what I mean? Or same thing in Singapore. You just go to Orchard Road. I'm Singapore is more than just Orchard Road, baby girl. Yeah. Explore.
Now that's also one of the things.
Yeah.
That when you're traveling, especially when you're doing it first time, don't do shopping in the first days of the visit.
Do it on day 5.
Okay. So the first few days you visit museums. You may say garden, parks, and other things than buying.
Yeah.
Okay. So you expose yourself to culture, knowledge, leisure. Obviously, you know, if you have a park that you can visit,
that'd be great.
Be a natural park or amusement parks. Those are parks. So have that fun.
Yeah.
And then, do shopping is fine.
Yeah.
But if you do it in the first few visits, then it will absorb so much of your energy on that shopping things. Now, this is also one of the things. I remember when I traveled as a state officials. Our SOP is this. In the morning, we had breakfast with the entire team. And then we plan our conversations for the whole day. So we will be meeting, let's say we have 3 meetings or 4 meetings. What are issues that we will be discussing in these 4 meetings? And then in the evening, after we're done, we reviewed our conversation of the day. Okay, so we do that. And what happened is when you plan that, you focus on works. I remember we did the UNESCO conference in Paris. And in the last day, one of our team told me, Pak Hanis, many of our delegates had never been to Paris. And they haven't walked out of these conferences. They haven't been walking and enjoying Paris.
Yeah.
Can you give us a few hours before we return home so that we can do, a visit to Paris? Yeah, sure, you can do that.
Yeah.
But the point is this. Let's not use our time when you're abroad, especially where you have works, for leisure.
Yeah.
You do that for work.
Right.
You don't mix that. And then if you're planning on doing leisures, my suggestion is do the shopping in the later part.
Yep.
Okay.
Last day.
Do the interactions in the early parts of the visit.
Yeah.
But anyway, when you are away, you had an opportunity to reflect, to compare, to learn.
Yep.
And that reflections is what enrich you. So that's why I'm suggesting to have a passport and visit. It can be Singapore, it can be Malaysia, it can be Japan, it can be now. With the affordable airfare, you can go anywhere. You can go to Australia or anywhere nearby.
Yeah.
With quite a minimum cost compared to it used to be, but equip yourself with an experience of being an international person.
Yeah.
Now, so go back to your your initial questions about what can we do in the international arena. Then represent Indonesia.
Yeah. But
be a representative.
But you touch upon 2 very important things just now. Number 1, travel. Number 2, where was the other one? Traveling, and then
sharing, learning.
I forgot what the other point that I wanted to make was. But for example, what I was trying to say is that you mentioned 2 things just now, both of which are contingent upon the ability to comprehend and also speak English, which is like something else that I wanted to discuss today, because I find it very interesting. My friend was telling me about how he's an Indonesian. He lives in Washington, D.C., and he's there for work. And he wanted his family to come visit. And he told me that in Indonesia, there actually are a lot of cases where you have the resources in order to be able to travel, time, money. But some people, or actually like what he told me, a lot of people, they opt not to travel, especially like, I guess, too far away distances because they can't speak English, and because of that, they're scared. That is it for the free portion of this VIP episode, you guys. If you'd like access to this full episode with no ads, just for 18,000 rupiahs that will go towards supporting the show and the team of people that work so hard to make all this happen, head on over to Noise either on your mobile device app or web browser. Accepted payment methods include GoPay, Curus, credit cards, and virtual accounts. See you there.